to me, a lot of users, it's not that we don't want any kind of moderation or curation or rules about hate speech, especially those of us who are, people of color or come from a marginalized group. It's that it's so arbitrary and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it in the United States. Hello, and welcome to the Culture Beats podcast, featuring conversations about pop culture and many other aspects of life. I'm your host, Chris Bournet. My guest on this episode is technology expert Wouter Constant. I hope you enjoy our wide-ranging conversation about a new technology called Nostr that he says has the potential to remove censorship and cultural control from large corporations and give content creators more freedom. Without further ado, here's our conversation. Yeah, Wouter, thanks again for making the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. So, can you kind of give the listeners a little bit of background about yourself?
About me.
Yes.
So from a formal standpoint, I studied economic history in Rotterdam, and I have mostly a background in what's called distributed computing,
Uh-huh.
um, from like a self-taught and general interest perspective. And distributed computing is things of decentralized computing networks. So those could be torrents, is a very well known things like pirating or downloading software or stuff. Later on, the biggest decentralized computing network ever, Bitcoin, arose. So I had a lot of interest in that. And from there, slowly, I ended up with Nostr, which is going to be the discussion for today,
Right.
which is also a decentralized computing network for sharing information and creating social networks.
Right. So, can you kind of elaborate about Nostr and how it works?
Sure. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, because I looked up the website and I wasn't exactly sure that I grasped like what it is. I mean I know what open source is, sort of is like it's not owned by a corporation per se, but yeah, like for the
Yeah,
average
let's
person who's
let's
not tech savvy, what how does it
let's
work?
let's start with the preamble of indeed this is a protocol, and
Uh-huh.
a protocol is tech speak for a system of shared rules, basically.
Hmm.
And in the most general sense, the we have a whole bunch of protocols in our lives. English, for example, or language is a protocol as well,
Hmm.
because shared rules of grammar to make sure that we as humans understand each other. There are other protocols on top of that. You're nodding your head as I'm speaking. This is also like a subconscious protocol that is running for you
Right.
to ensuring that I understand, that you understand what I'm saying. But for
And then I'm
computers,
listening as well.
right, correct, yeah. But computers need like explicit rules, right? There, computers are very dumb machines, so you have to make explicit rules. So a protocol is just a list of these very explicit rules that computers understand. And in this case, these are rules for how data is structured, how data is exchanged, and how data needs to be interpreted. So that's a protocol. It's an open protocol, which means that nobody's in charge of the thing. It's just we have this set of rules, and everybody can use these rules. It's not proprietary. It's not owned by anyone,
Hmm.
and anyone is free to build on top of these rules. So free to build on top of this language. Um, then that goes into this notion that it's not owned by anyone. It's just some guy who came up with this thing. He put it out there in the world, and other people grabbed onto it, and that slowly evolved into more and more people starting to work on it. So there's no organization, there's no business, there's nothing there. Um, we do have a website, which is nostr.com. It just so happens that the person who owns nostr.com is friendly enough to make that available as a resource for information for people to look at. So that's nice. But it's not as if the people behind it's not as if nostr.com is the official website, because it's impossible to have an official website for this system. Um, so that all being said, I think the easiest thing is to explain it in contrast of the world that we live now. So as I mentioned, it's a decentralized system. And in contrast, we now live in a centralized world on the web where we function based on platforms. So think of Facebook, think of X, think of Instagram. These places are platforms, which means that they're essentially a single computer. Of course, it's not a physical single computer. It's these large server farms, and it may be distributed all over the place. But it's essentially one computer owned by one entity, in case like being Meta or Elon Musk or whatever it is. And what you do on these platforms is that you log in into these platforms with an account. So you knock on the door of this centralized computer and you say, please, can I come in? I want to have like an account here. I want to be this to be my name, this to be my picture, etc. And then that platform says, okay, fine, you can come in. And we have all these other people here that are posting this stuff. And these platforms, they facilitate three major things. So we can split that up in the notion of identity and network. So this is your account, and these are the people that you follow or people that follow you. The second one is hosting. So this is actually storing the actual data and making it available to other people. So you're posting a tweet or you're uploading a picture, etc. That data has to be stored somewhere. That's something that the platform does for you. And the third one is what you can call indexing, or these are search algorithms or suggestion feeds. So this is like indexing or processing all the data that is on this platform in order to figure out like what is relevant to you. That's the service that they provide. And what happens here is that these platforms they captured what is called the network effect. And the network effect is this notion that the value of a network grows exponentially in relation to the amount of nodes or participants that are in that network. So a easy example is telephones. If you only have one telephone in the world, it's absolutely useless. Mm-hmm. The moment you have two telephones in the world, it starts to become useful because you now can call that particular person. But you can understand that if more and more telephones start to pop up in the world, you can call more and more people, all the way up to the point where it's a safe assumption that somebody has a telephone and a telephone number, and then we can build societal structures based on top of that. So now, if you are interacting anywhere in this world, you assume that a business has a telephone number. If you have to fill in a form, you most often have to provide a telephone number, etc. So because this network effect of telephones gets so big, we start to leverage it in other ways and start to integrate it into society at large. And this is what happens with these platforms. So the bottom line is everybody's there because everybody's there. That's the inherent logic of network effects. The problem is that they provide the network effect. They've captured that in their little platform, or the large platform, because Meta has basically the entire world registered in terms of accounts. They have billions of users. We only have like 8 billion people on this planet, so there's not a lot of room for growth there anymore. But because they own that platform, they own that computer, they can the users of that platform incur what's called censorship risk. Mm-hmm. So that platform can decide who is allowed access, who is not allowed access, what type of communication is allowed, what type of moderation is going on over there. And this means that they have the network effect, but you also are now at the behest of the moderation and the censorship policies of these platforms. Now, you can always go to another platform. For instance, you can be on YouTube. YouTube has the network effect for videos. If you're somehow banned from YouTube or otherwise, you can go to another video platform. The problem is that you are inherently self-marginalizing the moment you do that, because those other platforms don't have the network effect. The network effect is over at YouTube. So even though technically you can still express yourself on the internet, and this is because the internet itself is a censorship-resistant technology that was once designed by the military explicitly for that purpose, to be censorship-resistant. From a societal and social perspective, you're missing out on this network effect. So this is the world that we live in now. We're utilizing these platforms because they provide us all these tools. They are a location where the network effect is, so everybody's there because everybody's there. But at the same time, they are in charge of the moderation policy, and everybody is incurring these censorship risks. So we are, as a matter of fact, in our actions, we act as if this is a public space, right? As if we perform the public discussion on X, for example. But the problem is that it's not a public space, it's a private space because it's owned by a company. So what happens then is that now we are acting as if it's the public space. So now there are public interests involved, which means that governments start to step in because, the moment public interests are involved, governments are like, well, public interest is our domain. So now we want to have a say about this. So what we ended up in now in the start of 2026 is a situation where we have, let's say, a 5-way tug of war with the platform in the center. We have on one of the ropes, we have the users, and the users are very varied a set of interests there, right, already. We have the advertisers that are the actual customers of these platforms, the paying customers for the most part. And then we have governments coming in, but it's not as if we have a world government. We have the United States, we have the European Union, we have Turkey, we have China, we have Australia. So it now becomes like a geopolitical battle that all try to tug on this central node, the central platform, as to what the policy ought to be, what the moderation policy ought to be. Mm-hmm. And basically, that's a dead end. So this is a scenario that I'm drawing here, and this allows me to subsequently explain Nostr in relation to this. So do you have any questions so far, Chris?
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is one of the upsides of an open source technology like Nostr is basically zero censorship, that basically any user can say anything they want. But I think what a lot of people have concerns with let's just use Facebook as an example, is not the fact that there's censorship. It's that the so-called moderation seems arbitrary, at least in the United States. It's like,
right.
I've had things randomly pulled, but someone else can post something that's complete misinformation. And at least from what I understand of the European Union, standards are a little more uniform. Like, you can't use what is universally considered in the European Union hate speech, like posting about pro-Nazi propaganda, or I don't live in Europe, so I don't know what I'm saying is exactly true. I'm just saying, it's, to me, a lot of users, it's not that we don't want any kind of moderation or curation or rules about hate speech, especially those of us who are, people of color or come from a marginalized group. It's that it's so arbitrary, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it in the United States. So are you saying that Nostr would totally bypass any kind of moderation or as you termed it, censorship, and just anyone can post anything as long as the person on the receiving end wants to receive it, basically?
Yes. So you nailed the nail on the head there, okay, right at the end, because in the first part of what you mentioned is what I'm going to describe is basically untangling this knot at the center of this tug of war that's going on, because of the impossibility of providing a moderation policy that satisfies this geopolitical clusterfuck, basically, of different perspectives on how things ought to be done all around the world, because these platforms are global, right? So what Nostr does is to start out of, so it's not a platform, it's a protocol, it's a language. Mm-hmm. And that language that allows you to create a post, a message, and that could be like a tweet, or it could be a picture, it could be an article, it could be a podcast, it could be anything that you would share or publish on the web. So it allows you to create a publication. And what it subsequently does is that you provide a signature with that publication. And this signature, it's based on cryptography. You're able to create a cryptographic identity yourself. You're not creating an account somewhere. You're just creating a cryptographic identity out of the blue, basically. Or at least your computer does it, and the computer does the math, obviously. But what the nice thing about the use of this cryptography is that the receiver is able to verify that the message is authentic. So if you know what my cryptographic name is, I can write a publication. I can produce a signature for that publication. And the moment when you receive that publication, you're able to run the math and see that it's actually valid, and you're able to verify that it was actually from me.
Okay.
And this is at the basis of how the system works, because now I can go through these levels that I was explaining as to the identity layer of your profile and your network, the hosting, and the indexing. And those were the three things that these platforms provide. So starting out with the identity is that we've got that covered. It's no longer an account at a platform anymore. It's something that you create yourself. And subsequently, your network is just like an address book of all these cryptographic identities that you've gathered over the time, people that you follow, people that you know, etc. So you no longer need any outside party anymore for you to facilitate that. The second part is the hosting. So what the result of the use of this cryptography and these cryptographic signatures is what we call tamper proofing, which means that I can produce it on my side. There may be a third-party carrier in the middle before it arrives at your place, but the message that I produced is tamper-proof. The carrier cannot tamper with that message without it being obvious that the message has been tampered with. So the moment the third-party carrier that's in between us tampers with the message, you immediately know that the message is invalid. And this means that it doesn't matter who is in between. It could be anyone, because we don't have to trust the carrier for the integrity of the message anymore. And this is different with these platforms, because when you go to Instagram, for example, and you see an Instagram post, the authority of the authenticity of that Instagram post is Instagram itself. It's not the person that published the Instagram post. It's Instagram that actually said this person published this thing. It's not that it's going to happen, but technically Instagram could just take your account and start to create all kinds of publications that you've never actually produced, and start to pretend as if you were saying this. And this is impossible when you use this cryptography, because the carrier doesn't have my keys, right? The carrier doesn't know the cryptographic secret that I'm functioning under. So all the carrier has to do is deliver the message. It cannot tamper with the message without it being noticed. So this means that it doesn't matter who the carrier is anymore. It doesn't matter where the data is hosted. So this means that we can decentralize the hosting. So it no longer we don't all rely on Instagram.com anymore to host our pictures. It can be located anywhere. The only thing you as a follower need to know is where it is hosted in order to retrieve it. Right? It's basically like a post office box, right? It's like, I'm just saying, like, you can pick it up at this box over there, or you can pick it up at this box over there. Maybe I put it in 3 boxes at the same time, and just pick it up at this whatever box it is that is convenient for you. And you can locally verify if the message was authentic. So we had the identity layer that's no longer in the hands of the platform, because we have it ourselves. We have the hosting layer, which is now decentralized. We don't rely on a particular server anymore. We can use whatever server that we think is convenient. And then the last part is the indexing, which is now a service that can be provided by anyone. It's basically an open market for providing you suggestion algorithms or feeds, or etc. And when we're talking about this notion of censorship, is at the hosting layer, because we're still using these third-party carriers. We're still using these post office boxes, right? And we rely on them to ensure that my message gets over to your side. And those servers that we're using, they're still owned by people. That's still the same. And this is why I'd like to say that even though the point of Nostr is to create. Let's. This is important. The point of Nostr is to create censorship resistance, right? To solve this censorship problem that I was discussing, while at the same time providing the network effect. Whereas on these central platforms, we have the network effect, but we lose it the moment we go off the platform. The point of Nostr is that we don't rely on any particular platform anymore. We're not being censored. We're not be able to be censored by them, and we're still able to maintain network effect regardless of what server or what platform we start using. And the point about censorship is that even though the system is created to be censorship resistant, I always like to say Nostr is pro censorship, by which I mean because the users are flexible into what server they're using, they can switch at any time. This means that those servers themselves are free to apply whatever policy that they see fit. They own, it's their computer. They own that thing. They can decide as to what they want to retrieve, what they want to store, and what they want to give out and to whom. They can apply whatever policy that they see fit because they don't have to take into account that they have this abstract debt to humanity in order to facilitate all these lofty goals because everybody is dependent on them. No, nobody is dependent on them other than whatever uses that they happen to have, and they can apply whatever policy of moderation or censorship, whatever it is that they want. And that boils down to exactly what you ended on, which is freedom of association. So Nostr provides freedom of association. It allows me to be in contact with my followers. It allows me to be in contact with the people that I follow in a way that no third party can get in between and stop me from following or being followed by my audience. And as a result, we have freedom of association, but we also untangled this knot of this five-way tug of geopolitical war going on, because now we can just split up and apply whatever policy that we see fit, or apply whatever jurisdiction, or we can have political or social debates on how things ought to be done. That's fine because we're not all dependent on the same platform anymore. Do I make sense, Chris?
Yeah, yeah, you do. It sounds like though there are like pros and cons to what you described because how do I, as the recipient, know what you're sending me? So, for example, if someone in Europe decided to send me something, that's like encrypted, as you said, how do I know what I'm receiving? So, say I'm just like bored at work, as a lot of people do, they browse social media.
Mm-hmm.
Should you never open something from Nostr because you don't know what somebody's, even though you know the person and you don't know what I could be opening some violent image that my coworker walking by my computer sees and thinks, oh, I need to report him to the police because he's looking at violent images on his work computer or even his own personal phone or whatever. How do I, as the recipient, know what the sender is sending me and it's not something that in my country is illegal?
Ah, um, well, I guess there are a couple of answers. So the obvious one is most of the time you know whom you're following, right, or what your feed is constructed out of.
Yeah.
So it's not as if your grandma all of a sudden starts to share all kinds of raunchy pictures, right?
Uh-huh.
But there are also like on the what we call client side, so the software that you're using that can start to filter out certain things. So it can do language filtering or it can do image filtering based on the stuff that it is, and that software that you use, right? You're controlling this software, so it's not somebody else that decides that for you. And the third layer is so we had like the social layer as to who you trust in the first place. The second layer is the client that you're using, the software that you're using that can apply these types of techniques. And the last layer is that it could actually be the server that you're relying on, which in Nostr we call relays. So you could just be using a server that filters out, like has a moderation policy that is safe for work, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, especially in the hours that you're at the office, you're only connecting to those servers that already filtered the stuff that is safe for work. And then you're basically extending trust to that server to apply those policies. And subsequently, you're able to apply all three of those methods at the same time. So in the first instance, you're only in contact with people that do not post any weird stuff. You're connecting to relays that filter out any weird stuff, and as a last resort, you're also using software that may any weird stuff coming in, it starts to filter that out as well. So we're very flexible as to how we're able to tackle or manage our own digital environments as to what it is that we actually want to see, and with whom and in what manner we actually want to interact with.
Yeah, what you're describing kind of sounds like certain technologies, like certain smart TVs allow parental controls, like parents can set up filters or blockers rather to keep their children from seeing certain content. Is that basically what you're describing? Something like that?
Yes, but there's a very important aspect here that I think is important to describe, because all that I've described now is basically how this language, this protocol functions. It's
Uh-huh.
you're just creating publications, you're signing it with your signature, and then you're using these servers that we call relays in order to exchange them. And this is subsequently what the name Nostr stands for. It's notes and other stuff transmitted by relays. So this notes is NOTES, right? So we have notes like tweets and other stuff, and that's like pictures or weather reports or whatever it is that you want to share on the web, transmitted by relays. So that's the technical description of what is going on. What that means in practice is that you can use any software you want. The only thing that software has to do is speak the Nostr language.
Okay.
So you can have like apps that look like Twitter, for example. And I have on my phone, I have like 5 different applications. They're completely different. They look sort of similar because they try to do to give like a Twitter vibe or a Twitter interface, looking at tweets. But I can switch to them at any moment. So if there are features in one particular app that I like, or let's say I dislike them, I can always go to another app where there are features that are not present there, or if there are features that I do like, for example, these parental controls or
Mhm.
content filtering or whatever it is, I can just whenever I'm at the office, I use the app that is like very locked down, and when I'm at home again, I'm just start using another app that is far more open. So this is important that you're not locked to a particular app anymore. We're not Nostr frees you from a particular platform, and it also frees you from using a particular app. So we're now free to interact with whomever we want using whatever application that we want, and we don't even have to use the same app. The only thing the app does is it allows you to create this publication and sign it, and it allows you to retrieve other publications from other people at these relays or post office boxes, basically. That's what the client software or the apps on your phone or the web or your computer or your tablet or whatever, all these things exist already, do for you.
So would maybe an analogy be like something like crypto or Bitcoin, where it's not maybe not controlled by a specific bank, and it's not tied to like a certain bank account? Is that kind of a similar?
Yes, and one thing is also similar is that you're not tied to a particular app. You're not
Okay.
like with Bitcoin, you can use a wallet, what's called a wallet.
Okay.
And there are different types of wallets, different type of software. There are also hardware wallets, like these hardware devices, and there are a
Mhm.
plethora of these hardware devices. Another example would be email. Email is also an open protocol. It's an old open protocol.
Yeah.
We actually use it at the foundation of a lot of this stuff, because when you're signing up for an account at a platform, and it always boils down to an email, basically. So, and with email, you can use Hotmail, you can use Outlook, you can use Gmail, you can use Proton Mail,
Mhm.
all these different service providers. They're all allowing you to use email, and me using Proton Mail can send an email to you using Gmail. That doesn't matter. The thing with email is that it's still tied to a particular server, right? Your email address is always at gmail.com. So this is where Nostr is different. Is you're no longer tied to the at Gmail anymore. You're free to use whatever service is convenient at the time, and you can switch to a different service at any moment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like with any technology, there's any technology is basically a tool. Like a hammer, you can, this is not an original analogy, but you can use a hammer to build a house or to bludgeon someone to death.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like with Nostr or with any open source technology, it can be used, like you said, for freedom of expression, but it could also be used, for example, terrorists to pass messages back and forth and not be detected by law enforcement. I'm not saying that's the purpose. I'm just saying with
Well,
any
that
technology, it could be abused.
it's a wrong example because for the most part, what Nostr is built for and Nostr is used for is public information, right? I'm talking about
Yeah,
publications.
yeah.
So this is a very public facing thing. That doesn't mean that everything that it's complete. There is no such thing as privacy.
Okay.
It's important to define privacy. Privacy is the ability to just to disclose, to have the ability or control to disclose whatever it is you want to the outside world. Um, so I could be for one example of privacy is, for example, paywalled content, right?
Hmm.
I have some control as to who gets to see what at under what condition. These things are possible within Nostr, but the main thing is that it's you're creating publications. You're signing it with you're producing it with a signature, right? You're putting your name underneath it. If I'm doing very clandestine criminal operations, I'm not
Yeah,
even going to sign things in the first place, right?
right.
I don't want it to be traceable in any way. So for the most part, other types of technologies would be used for clandestine secret that's the word, like secret operations. So that's one part. The other part is, yes, of course it is able, you are able to um for example, child abuse material or sextortion is like another thing. So you're posting raunchy pictures of somebody else, right? Or you're blackmailing
Yeah.
them with that type of stuff. um the thing there is that you and this is a very important discussion because this is this is something that we're facing right now in various countries, be that countries within the EU or Australia or Great Britain or to some extent America or everywhere in the world. Um, is the fundamental question: do we want the internet to be permissionless or not? Do we want the internet to be permissionless, where you can just connect to the internet and you can start interacting with other people without going through some gate in order to get permission to enter, or um, do we and accept the risks that come with that stuff?
Hmm.
Um, that there are bad people in the world that do share nasty things,
Hmm.
which ultimately are still just people in the physical world, in a physical place that you can look up and lock up. Right there's still law enforcement capabilities in these types of scenarios. Um, or do we say no? We don't. We want to give up this freedom of a permissionless internet because of these reasons, and we're going to put the government in control. You have to provide your passport. You're going to sit down behind your computer. You have to put your passport into the computer. You have to stick it in. You have to scan your eyeball, whatever it is,
Hmm.
in order to get permission to enter the internet. Um, to give us the idea that we can prevent this type of stuff. That's basically the discussion that goes on here. And with Nostr, and for me personally, and with the people involved with Nostr, we want to keep the internet permissioned.
Hmm.
So we understand, oh, sorry, permissionless. We understand that there are problems with these platforms. Like I said, this five-way geopolitical tug of war going on. We want to solve that, and hopefully I explained how we are able to disentangle that knot by allowing freedom of association, um, instead of all depending on particular platforms that have to define a policy for the entire world. Um, we want to solve a lot of these issues that we have with the internet, but we still want to maintain the freedom to associate with whomever we want. Because I'm not I'm not an asshole. I'm not going to do nasty things or criminal things. And most of the other people in the world are also not going to do that stuff. And we have a whole lot of benefit and innovation and of being able to have an open internet and communicate and interact with each other, especially if you also consider is that if we put the government in charge, how are we going to ensure that the government is actually going to do a good job as to being in control over the internet, right? Are they going to run a ministry of truth? Like who guards the guards, right? You get all these fundamental philosophical questions going on, and I think at least in the West we have a long philosophical tradition that informs us that that's not a good road of to go down, and we've been on this road of liberty for a very long time now, and I think personally for very good reason, and I think the idea behind Nostr is to continue that tradition of freedom of association and liberty of expression and that type of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like in an ideal world, Nostr would be used for what the internet was originally supposed to be about, was the free exchange of ideas
Exactly.
and the
Yes.
democratizing of a means to which to express those ideas without a gatekeeper, a corporate gatekeeper telling you what you can and you cannot say, or putting walls up or borders, so to speak, between people in different countries or different parts of the world.
Yes, exactly. And that one of the interesting phenomena with Nostr is that there are a lot of old farts, like old IT guys, right? That built the early internet. That when the moment when they get aware of Nostr, they're immediately enthusiastic because they identify exactly this. Is that when they were younger and they built the internet, they had this vision. They slowly saw that vision erode over time with the emergence of these platforms. And now with Nostr, they start to identify that we have an option here or a chance to rebuild a lot of these things in a way that better adheres to the original vision. Because what the problem was with the first version of the web 1.0 basically was this friction of network effect. These platforms they made it very very convenient to create a page, right? You didn't have to create your own website. You just go to MySpace, right? It started a lot of this started with MySpace or later Facebook. You just had to go to their website and you could very easily create a page on their website instead of having your own website. And then subsequently everybody just went to Facebook, and now we have this network effect going on. And with Nostr, we're able to just break this up again. And it's very easy. And we've made it very easy for people to create their own digital presence, their own digital identity, and create their own digital networks and maintain network effect. And not just network effect of within. And this is also why I think Nostr has an actual chance, because the network effect is really, really strong, right? It's very difficult to dethrone Facebook because everybody's already there. So, and it's very difficult to migrate people to other places. If everybody is using a particular chat app, it's very difficult to to convince all your friends to start using a different thing. So, and this is because of this network effect. And what is important with Nostr is that on these platforms, the network effect is often in these verticals. So we have YouTube does videos, and X does tweets, and Instagram does pictures, and Booking.com does hotels and vacations, and you have Uber does taxis, and Uber Eats does food delivery or whatever it is. Those are all particular verticals. With Nostr, you're able to connect all these verticals horizontally and create these network effects horizontally. So I can have a network of chefs that I'm following, and maybe those chefs they produce recipes, right? So I have a recipe app, and I leverage this network of chefs to figure out like what are nice recipes for me to cook. But then subsequently, I can also start looking at a restaurant review app, for example, to pick out a restaurant or to book a restaurant, and then I can leverage this network of chefs that maybe also have opinions on what are actually the good restaurants around a certain place. So you can start to see it's like you're able to, because you're never losing the network that your the social network that you've already created. You can start to apply it over all these different domains. So we're with Nostr we're able to actually create this horizontal network effect and not just within this particular vertical. And that's our secret weapon. That hopefully at some point we have like a marginal Twitter, and we have a marginal Instagram, and we have a marginal YouTube, and they're very marginal, not a lot of users. They're maybe the apps aren't very great, but we have at least everything, but a lot of small amount of users. But for those small amount of users, it's actually more convenient now to use Nostr because they have all their stuff in there. They have their videos and their podcasts and their articles and the restaurant. All these things are now there. So the network effect for all these marginal things is now stronger than the individual network effects of all these particular silos in the center. And at that point, it starts to become a lot easier for me to convince other people. It's like, well, this is my life. My life is that I can use whatever app that I want. I'm not stuck with a particular app. You keep complaining that you don't like this new feature or this change, because you're stuck, right? You're stuck in this environment. And I'm not stuck. I can use whatever app, and I'm using it for all these different types of things, and I can maintain my social network. And the network effect that we have horizontally over all these various domains starts to become larger as to what these larger incumbent players have accrued over time for their particular vertical. Now, of course, they are competing with each other, because you notice that X starts to also introduce articles, and also starts to introduce videos, and maybe YouTube started to also introduce like the shorts to compete more with TikTok. So they are slowly trying to all competing to become the everything app. But that's actually worse, because now if they also become the everything app, they also have to decide like the design policy for the everything application, that you're also not going to satisfy everybody, because everybody wants to, like, I want to have a look or feel differently, etc. So I think we have an actual decent shot at competing in the long term, at least, with the incumbent systems, and that's important because we have a long history of attempts and existing open protocols out there that had various success, and I think we actually have like a road to victory here with Nostr, at least in the long term.
So yeah, you mentioned all these multimedia forms of communication. So if someone using Nostr, they know that this person is sending me an audio podcast while this other person that I communicate or that I exchange or whatever that I receive encrypted messages from, they're sending me a video. This person is usually sending me a text-based message or communication. So Nostr can handle all those different formats, video,
Yes.
audio. Okay.
Yes. So to one thing to clarify is that the publications are not encrypted. They're not secret in that sense. What
Okay.
they contain a cryptographic signature. So it's just if you actually produce like a signature with your hand, which is probably unique to some degree. The thing is, just with cryptographic signatures, they're extremely unique. So they're you cannot falsify. I may be able to falsify your handwritten signature. You're never gonna falsify my digital signature, provided that the keys that I use are not, the secret that I have is not compromised. Which is important to note. What is important to understand within this paradigm that I'm explaining is that from the perspective of a content creator, is in the current slash old system, you have to have a YouTube account, and you have to have a Twitter account, and you have to all these accounts for these various platforms for all the types of multimedia that you're producing. So if you're producing a podcast, you have a Spotify account. If you're uploading the video to YouTube, maybe you have you're posting the announcement of the fact that the episode is out. You do that on Twitter. Maybe you write an article about the podcast and you put that on Substack or whatever the platform that is. With Nostr, the whole point is that you don't have a whole variety of accounts. You just have one profile, which is Chris. I'm Chris. I'm this content producer, and I produce a podcast, and I produce an article, and I produce a tweet, and I produce. You just produce those things. You provide them with the same signature. You just put that out there, and when I follow you, I follow Chris. And when I use an app that is built for tweets, I can see, oh, he posted a tweet announcing the podcast, and I can just click on that, and that opens up another app that is built for podcast, and then I can just listen to your podcast. Or I go to another app that when I'm browsing my video app, I can see, oh wait, the video of Chris popped up into my feed, and the same thing with the articles, etc. It's just you create these publications, and it's just depending on if I'm following you, I'm still following you over all these apps. I am following you, and it just depends on, am I using a tweet app, or am I using a video app, or am I using a podcast app, or maybe an app that combines all these features. Doesn't matter. I'm following you, and the software just provides me an interface to interface with whatever media it is that you've published. So I, as a user, am flexible in whatever app that I use, and you, as a content creator, are flexible in the sense that you don't have to maintain all these various accounts at these various places. Maybe you have to host redundantly because you're not doing just YouTube, you're also doing Rumble, and you have to also cover all these marginal platforms. That's all gone within Nostr. It's just you create your publication, whatever that publication is. It's a tweet or a video or whatever. You provide it with your signature, therefore proving it came from you. And then whomever it is that is following you, or you come along in their feed, is able to consume whatever your publication is with whatever app that they happen to use.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the early days of streaming and like music file sharing with Napster.
Yeah.
But the drawback with Napster is that, you know, artists and record companies were saying, "Oh, this is copyright infringement. You're
Mm-hmm.
sharing, you know, music that someone created, and no, you know, no one's or only one person paid for it, and whoever downloads it is not paying for it." So what are the or are there any copyright infringement issues with Nostr?
Well, copyright is an interesting question in relation to the internet, exactly for the reason that it's an old discussion, right? It's not as if the discussion now immediately just pops up with the existence of Nostr. This is just a default discussion that is there with the internet, because it's just very easy to duplicate data and share data. The nice thing about Nostr is that Nostr is actually built or thought up by a Bitcoin developer. Mm-hmm. And this also means that the first people that were aware of Nostr were his buddies, which were also Bitcoin developers. And as a consequence, the first community that started to use Nostr were a lot of Bitcoiners. So to reiterate, it's not Nostr, and by itself has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It just so happens that these are the type of people that think in a certain way in order to construct these types of things. It doesn't work like Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin. But because Bitcoin is digital money for the internet, there are very tight integrations built into Nostr with Bitcoin already. Now, you could also integrate credit cards or whatever other cryptocurrency. It just happens that Bitcoin is already very well integrated. And the type of micropayments and streaming payments to pay for content already exist. And we already have, it's again marginal, but we have artists coming in, musicians coming in that already experience that they have a very tight direct contact connection with their audience on Nostr. And that audience is able to just send them money directly. And they only have to, it's a very low threshold to actually do such a thing, to the point where these artists are already making more money on Nostr, marginal amounts still. Yeah, they're not getting rich, but they're already making more money than they've made on Spotify those preceding years, their entire artist career. So the system is already benefiting them more than Spotify ever did. So I like, it's what do you say? It's like it's a speculation as to how these things will evolve, but it's not that we're not without an answer. I'm not gonna claim that this is the answer. I'm not gonna claim that in 10 years these types of systems actually solved all the problems that are out there. But it's not that we are completely without an answer as to how do we solve for financial incentives and that type of stuff.
Right, right. So how do you think the word spreads, and how does Nostr get more people using it? Is it just through word of mouth and just kind of organically, or how will
I
momentum
think
build?
that's the so there are two ways. This is a new paradigm. So let me start out with this. This is a new paradigm, and I've spent a lot of time first trying to understand this new paradigm, and then spent a lot of time thinking about how to communicate this paradigm and explain this paradigm to people, and to perhaps varying audiences and adjustments to my story, etc. Because it's just there are things that are different as to how things are working now. Um, that's not necessarily a problem. People learned to use the current internet,
Right.
and uh, that was new at some point, right? So people had to learn a lot of things in order to use the current internet. That also means that they would have to learn some certain things in to use this new type of internet. Um, well, at the same time, they're in an environment where there are not as many people as there are in the old internet, right? Facebook has so many billions of users, Nostr hasn't. So when you're coming in within a Nostr environment, you're basically doing two things. You have to put in the effort to do the basic social media stuff or the basic internet stuff to create your connections and find people you think are interesting in an environment that is relatively scarce.
Mhm.
Well, at the same time, you're confronted with learning new stuff, maybe in an environment where not all the software is all that great, right? So it's just a certain type of person that at this stage, or at least let's say the past 3 years, was involved with Nostr. And as more people join and the software gets better, it starts to become more and more people are able to come in and actually get through that process in a manner. It's like, okay, there are more people. It's easier to find other people. The software is easier to use. So now not just the tech nerds, but other people are now are able to come in, right? And that's a scale. That's a spectrum of type of users. So let's say at the end of the spectrum is like your grandma, right?
Mhm.
So at the start of the spectrum is like the tech nerd, that's me, and at the end of the spectrum is like your grandma, and we're just moving along that process, and that means that I'm not like at the end of this, I'm not gonna have any call to action. My only call to action is like go to nostr.com. If you think it's interesting, you can go there. The resources are there, and if you're able to figure it out, you're able to figure it out, and that's where we at right now. Because I'm not gonna try to force your grandma to start using Nostr, because maybe if she figured it out for like a little bit, she's gonna start quit using it after a day. And like, what use was that, right? So my personal belief is that it is this organic growth by word of mouth. I'm doing these podcasts. Whomever thinks it's interesting and got through this explanation and actually understood what I said, and it clicked for them. Um, they have the means to figure it out and go out there, um, and go to YouTube and find tutorials, and there are stuff out there that will help you along this journey. Um, but I'm not selling anyone anything. I'm just here to explain, and I think that's the main driver, um, or that's the base flow, let's say, of like this word of mouth thing. And then we have the carrot and the stick. Um, there are areas where Nostr is better. There's not a lot of carrot there, right? But there is carrot there. I mean, especially for content creators, there's a lot of carrots, just not a lot of audience. But it's a small little carrot at least. Um, and there's a lot of stick, and the stick is growing a lot. We have legislation going on. The platforms are getting crappier and crappier. You're getting washed with ads. You're using Netflix. You're paying for Netflix, and you're still forced to watch ads or whatever. So governments are coming in with regulation, tightening things. So there's a lot of reason as to why being in these central platforms is not a nice experience anymore. So for more and more people, that's just got to be a pressure to leave. And so that's the carrot, and sorry, that's the stick. And then there is some carrot on the other side there as to why we are better at doing certain things. And in between, there's just me trying to explain things and people doing word of mouth and all this other type of stuff to grow this thing organically and provide resources for people to figure things out.
Yeah, well, you did a great job of explaining and going through the pros and cons. So I really appreciate you, Wouter, taking the time to speak with me and to explain the benefits of Nostr. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are curious. And like you said, it's up to us who are curious about it to go seek it out and figure out how to use it.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah,
Like,
thank you.
really, thank you. I mean, it's just I'm just here. I'll go to whomever wants to listen, and I'm very grateful for the fact you gave me this hour to have this talk with you.
Yeah, thanks again for taking the time and for so patiently answering all my questions and being willing to debate about the pros and cons. I really appreciate it.
Perfect.
If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.